Today, I'm so honored to bring to you a journey from Amanda. We're going to be talking about ambiguous grief. You may not have heard that term before, ambiguous grief, but I know a lot of you have experienced ambiguous grief. Sometimes we see it when a parent or a child has left the relationship or the death of a loved one has never been confirmed. There are many forms of ambiguous grief. It's when there's no closure and you can't healthily grieve the loss of someone. Amanda has had ambiguous grief her entire life. Among other types of grief, this is the most prevalent in her journey. We also would like to talk about some disclosures. There will be some suicide warnings with adult content and suicide and the abuse, neglect in a child. In this video, you're going to see Amanda's journey. Well, we're here to welcome Amanda to Grieve and Go. We're so happy to have you. Today, we are going to get into some grief. We have a lot to cover and unpack, so we're so excited to get started. Why don't we get started with you telling us a little bit about maybe where you live now and your family and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I live in Payson, Utah right now, a cute little house by myself. I do have two boys. They are the oldest is Colton. He's almost 25. And then my youngest is 21. His name is Hunter.
Oh, fun. And are they living with you or?
They are not. They live with their dad in Louisiana. So they have lived there for about, I think this is their third year of living there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good. So has he always been in the picture? Did you guys divorce or?
Yeah, we have been divorced for, I think this is our 10th, maybe 11th year. He was, I'll call it in and out of the picture as far as parenting goes, a lot of out of the picture because he was so long distance. And so a lot of it was just done over the phone. Wasn't a lot of visitation. So I did most of the parenting on my own.
Yeah, that's amazing. I always love a single parent story. That's awesome. So let's get into it. There's a lot that we have to cover. I'm really excited to have you share your story. You have a lot of different grief journeys, and we're going to start this by breaking it down piece by piece. I don't want to go too fast because I know you have a lot to cover. So what I'd like to do is start at the beginning, and if you have to jump around, that's okay. And if I have some questions, I will ask you. Are you originally from Fairfield, Utah?
So we moved to Fairfield when I was in 5th grade. We previously lived in Payson on a church ranch. And when we moved to Fairfield, it was to manage the church ranch that was there. That's
right.
what my dad did for a living. So he worked for the LDS church and ran what's called their beef farms. And so all of the beef that he raised on those farms would go into the bishop's storehouse to feed individuals that get vouchers from the bishops, is my understanding.
Oh, fascinating.
So yeah, it was a lot of working outside. He was on call all the time, but it was a great place to grow up as a kid.
Is that where you want to start back then?
Sure.
Okay,
sure, that works.
Go ahead and tell me a little bit about your childhood and where you want to start.
Yeah, my childhood was pretty chaotic. My parents did the best that they could, but my dad was basically a single dad because my mom had a lot of mental illness. I'd love to be able to say what it was, but it was the 80s and they were just throwing all these diagnoses at her, all these types of medication, all these types of treatment.
Not to cut you off, what did it look like to you? Like what kind of behaviors was she having?
So now that I'm adult, I know that there was a lot of depression. There was a lot of sleeping. There was a lot of mood swings. So a lot of like walking on eggshells. You weren't sure if mom was going to explode or if mom was going to be okay.
I see.
And the explosions, unfortunately, were pretty abusive explosions. So breaking of dishes, if you didn't say the right thing, there was physical abuse, a lot of mental abuse, and I would call it neglect as well. And again, she did the best she could, but just it was the 80s and they could not figure out what would work for her. And unfortunately, the medication that did work made her basically a zombie. Like no emotions at all, a lot of sitting on the couch, staring type situations. And so she didn't like that feeling. And so she would flush the medication, which then, of course, would cause a fight with her and my dad, which would not be a simple argument. It would be, like yelling and screaming type situation. So I was the oldest, of course. I had a brother who was 10 years younger and then a sister that's like 18 months younger than me.
Okay.
So that put me in the situation a lot of times of being a mom to my brother and my sister, and a lot of occasions when my dad was working. So my dad was a great dad. He just wasn't sure how to deal with all of the situations with my mom. So
And were you in Fairfield at this time?
so actually the reason that we moved from Payson to Fairfield is that my mom was exhibiting behaviors that were causing problems with my dad's work. And so basically just doing things like throwing rocks through neighbors' windows with sayings on them, just very erratic type things. And so it was best for my dad to move out in Fairfield where there were no neighbors. So we were out in the middle of nowhere, no neighbors. I think our closest neighbor was 2 miles away. And I mean, that made it better for my dad's job because my mom's mental illness was a little bit more sheltered and not known about. I think it made it worse for our family as a whole, mainly because the support wasn't there and there wasn't somebody checking in on us, like family members and those sort of things. So unfortunately, like he had to do that to keep his job. It was great nature wise because decompression, like when the house was chaotic, I could take my brother and my sister outside and we could go like watch the cows or we could go for a walk, those sort of things. So.
How old were you about around this time?
Oh my goodness. So how old are you in fifth grade? I think
10. My daughter's 10.
Okay.
She's in the fifth
Yes.
grade.
Yeah. So I was 10 when we moved to Fairfield. I've been told that my mom started exhibiting issues after my sister was born. So I would have been only 18 months old when things started to kind of escalate for her.
Okay. Okay. Tell me what happens next in your journey.
Well, so we're in Fairfield. My parents are not getting along, meaning my mom is spiraling a lot of chaos, even a lot of my dad tried to stay with my mom for a really long time because as part of working for the LDS church, you have to follow their standards. And part of that is being married. And so, of course, they were married in the temple. So there was a lot of, I would call it guilt and him staying in their relationship. But there was a point when I was probably past junior high, because I do remember in junior high there was some things that happened post divorce. But anyway, past a little bit before I hit junior high age, the church actually helped my dad relocate my mom. I'll call it. It was the thing that they thought would keep me and my brother and my sister safe because she was escalating and being physically abusive to my sister and my brother. So what they did is they took her to a hotel and dropped her off there, which is, I mean, it sounds very heartless, but it was to protect me and my brother and my sister. And back then, like getting protective orders against a mother, it just was unheard of.
I mean, hearing it now makes me want to say, well, why aren't we arresting this woman and why aren't we doing all these other things? But I understand like the 80s. I have my own story, so I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a lot of like judges saying, well, they need to have visitation and they need to have their mom around. But my dad fought really hard in the courts with paperwork and those types of challenges. A lot of psychologists saying like these kids shouldn't be around their mother. But unfortunately, my dad didn't have a ton of money to fight it. And every time he'd have to go to court, he would have to not work, which becomes a challenge when you're out on a farm by yourself and you're supposed to manage it by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And then my dad had a hearing issue and he had dyslexia. And so trying to understand what the lawyers were telling him or even the judges in court was challenging. So like he would put his hearing aids in and they wouldn't be loud enough and he would ask them to repeat and they just wouldn't do it. And, I wasn't there in the court system, but that's my understanding based off of what family members have told me. But he fought really hard to get us into a place that wasn't as chaotic, that was not as emotionally abusive and physically abusive. But again, it was the 80s, mother's rights. My mom had a state appointed attorney because she didn't have a job. And so everything that he was doing costed him money or time. And so, I mean, he fought like crazy. But I do remember times that we would have to go and visit my mom because it was mandated. If my dad did not show up, the cops would show up at the door, right? So there was, I mean, it was back and forth through the courts. There was a time where a judge ruled that we would go live with our mom. And us little country bumpkins out from Fairfield ended up in the middle of Salt Lake City. And the area itself wasn't super safe because she was on state assistance for rent. And I would say the symptoms from her mental illness were just horrible because her sister in particular didn't think she had any problems. So didn't check in on medications, didn't take her to, appointments for psychologist. We were living in an apartment. We had no beds. We were just sleeping on the floor. There wasn't a lot of food in the cupboards, I remember. And my mom she was just sleeping. And I was the one that was taking care of my brother and sister. My sister, of course, was, a year and a half year and a half younger than me. My brother, of course, I was, 10, 12, 13, taking care of a toddler baby. So there was a lot of times that I would leave for school, and of course I would have to leave him with her knowing that it wasn't safe. But I felt like in my child brain that like I needed to be at school because that was my safe space and I wanted to make sure that I was learning. And so, I mean, I remember one time it was the first day of school, and most moms are like super excited and they drop their kids off at school. New area. I had no idea how to get to school, and I was supposed to walk me and my sister to school, and we got lost. I remember, and we were in a bad area of Salt Lake, and one of the crossing guards was like, "Where are you guys going?" Like, we're going to school. And he's like, "Yeah, you're way off." So he pointed me in the right direction, which was very challenging because like I was, came from a farm and like all of a sudden in this, gosh, like 6-story school, trying to transition through that, lots of fighting. I mean, I'm sure the school wasn't a great district to be in. And so, from there, I think my aunt realized that things weren't going well. I do remember my aunt would come over and she'd be like, "How long has your mom been sleeping?" And sometimes I'd have to say 3 days, 2 days. Like,
Wow.
she would get up to go to the bathroom, but wasn't making meals or any of that stuff. And so we eventually moved into my aunt's house. She was a single mom and she had, I think I had 3 or 4 cousins that were living there in Liberty Park when Liberty Park was not a good area.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
know Liberty Park well.
Yeah. So I remember things like finding needles in the backyard. So we couldn't go outside in the backyard. Thank goodness we never got hurt, but it was very challenging because that house was not any better, unfortunately. It was very dirty. We were left alone a lot. I mean, there were dirty dishes and cockroaches and just dirty. And I remember one day we were watching TV, and of course I was taking care of my brother and sister like I always do. And the front door opened, and I was like, "Oh no, mom's home," and there's just that eggshell feeling of, is she going to be okay or is she not going to be okay? Like, how's this day going to go? And
Oh, she moved in with you?
yeah, she moved in with my
okay.
aunt. Sorry. I should have mentioned
That's
that.
okay. No,
Yeah.
this is making sense. Okay.
Yeah. So my aunt moved all of us into the house to try to help my mom. And anyway, the door opened and I was like, "Oh, that's my grandma and my aunts. What are they doing here? That's really weird." And we were watching TV, and we'd probably been watching TV for a really long time. And they said, "Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." So, as an adult, they explained the story of they knew things weren't going well for us kids. The court had mandated that we needed to be with my mom, but it was not the right place for us. And they knew that my dad couldn't be the one that would go and pick us up. So my 2 aunts and my grandma drove to Salt Lake and made sure nobody was home and basically kidnapped us, which was,
Oh, wow.
it was actually a blessing in disguise because as an adult, I mean, I don't remember all of the badness in the house. I mean, I do remember it being dirty and I do remember there being cockroaches. I do remember the needles that we found, but when they explained the situation, they explained that like when they picked us up, we were dirty. We hadn't bathed in days. My brother had a huge diaper rash. He had not been changed in a long time because, I mean, it was my responsibility to change him, and I should not have been responsible for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
So sad.
yeah, they took us, and I don't remember a lot of the details on like where we went or anything like that, because I think as you go through these situations in life, whether it's, grief, I mean, I would say it would be grief, like grieving my childhood. I never really had a childhood. You kind of just forget the details.
I think trauma does that to us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when somebody mentions something, you're like, oh, I do kind of remember that, but this is the way I remember it. And it's not even like what really happened, sometimes. So,
Can I just ask a question?
sure.
At this time, what was your dad's perception of what was going on? I mean, all this time while you guys were gone, I mean, was he grieving his children? Do you know what his story was at this time? I can't help but have my heart go out to your dad.
Yeah. So I don't know, because I never had a chance to have that type of relationship to ask my dad.
Okay.
He was always the strong, we don't talk about emotions type situation, because I just don't think he knew how to deal with them.
Yeah.
He wasn't angry. Like, he didn't get angry. Well, there were some times he would get angry, but nothing like my mom. But we just didn't talk about the situation. We didn't talk about the emotions. And really that's because my mom was trying to alienate my dad. As an adult now, I see it as that. I didn't know what it was as a child.
Sure.
But there was this constant between my mom and dad around who was the better parent, who was taking better care, all of those sort of things. So, I mean, I think my dad I'm sure he was grieving his divorce, right? Like, you have to grieve that. He was probably grieving how his children were not being mothered properly. And then the whole, like, how am I supposed to do it myself?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that as a kid and an adult, or excuse me, as a kid and a teenager. So I, of course, was the one that decided that I wanted to flee the nest in a way.
Sure.
Which leads to my like teenage years of rebelling against just not wanting to be in that house anymore. And it wasn't necessarily my dad, because it was my dad at the time. It was just not wanting to follow, I mean, to be blunt, the LDS standards that he had to have. And the challenge I had there is just like, he worked for the LDS church. There were requirements around the way we had to act as a family.
Yes.
And a lot of it was we had to be quiet about what was happening in the house. It's not like we could say our parents are fighting, or, my mom is, hitting my sister in front of me because she didn't clean her room. Like, that we couldn't talk about that kind of stuff. And then it became a situation where, as you're a teenager, of course you rebel, but I rebelled pretty hard and didn't want to follow any of the rules. And so, unfortunately, my dad did what dads do. And he said, if you're not going to follow the rules, you're going to need to get out. And I was like, okay, well, I got this new boyfriend, so I'll go live with him.
So your family came, they kidnap you. And then what happens?
Oh, sorry. I
don't apologize.
I jumped over that.
It's okay. So your family comes, they take you, and your brother and sister, and then what happens in your timeline?
So that's where I don't remember a lot from that timeline.
Okay.
I think that's
we can move forward. That's good.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff I think I just cut out. I know there was a lot of back and forth in court. I mean, I don't know if my dad ever got in trouble, but we had to do visitation, but we didn't ever move back with my mom. But again, like, he tried to shelter us through all that stuff, and I've not been able to have adult decision or conversations with him about it. But that's a lot that I blocked. My brothers and sister, like, they'll ask me about it, and I'll remember like parts of it, but I don't remember a lot of the stuff that they'll ask me about. Like, they'll ask, do you remember when this happened? And I'll say, no, I don't. And they're like, well, you're the one that protected us. And I was like, I don't remember. And I think I just blocked a lot of that. I think it got to the point where it was just too much.
Yeah.
Too much. And so when people are like, tell me about your childhood, I'm like, can we talk about something else?
Yeah.
Because it's really hard for me to remember the good times. unfortunately. So, I remember my aunts picking me up, and I remember that they took us I think they probably took us to the park and like clothes shopping, and then took us back to our dad's house. But then I don't remember a ton after that. And I try to ask my aunts about it, but it's like it's taboo in my family to talk about it. And so that's a lot of stuff that as I get older, I have to try to deal with and determine, is it like something I want to open up those wounds, or I just want to keep them closed? Because my body and my mind naturally has closed that, because there was some traumatic stuff that had happened. So,
Have you ever heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
oh my gosh. So yes,
Okay.
I have. So as an adult, I've done like every self-help book ever that anybody's ever mentioned. I've like, let's read it, let's listen to it. That one I have started and stopped at least 3 times.
It's heavy.
It's heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's written for doctors and by doctors, so it's a lot.
Yeah. But a lot of that helps me to understand, exactly what I'm talking about, like why I block those things out.
Yes.
And I know it's important to like heal that childhood stuff, but it's like you need a counselor for that. Like,
You do.
I don't think you can do that on your own without, I mean, you can in a way, but you're just putting a Band-Aid over the top of it is all you're doing. So, but yeah, that book brought me to tears at least 3 times.
Yeah. It unlocks some core things that sometimes maybe you don't want to have those wounds exposed, and then you just can't pick up your day and go on with open wounds like that.
Yeah.
What about EMDR? Have you ever done EMDR therapy?
I have not. So I have heard about that, and I actually had a friend that did it, and she says it works really well. But I have not done that, and really, I have a really hard time going to counselors because of my trust issues. Like,
valid.
It is very hard for me to trust that you're not going to judge me on my past, which seems really messed up because that's not what counselors should do. But I think it's that ingrained, like, we're a family. We don't talk about our business with other people.
I was going to make that connection for you. I feel like that's something that's been programmed. And so that's definitely something to really think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move forward. Tell me about your dad now.
Okay. Well, so when I was the rebellious teenager, and
how dare you?
I know. And I felt really guilty, but I did cut him out completely because he was, pushing LDS stuff on me, and I just didn't believe it. I didn't want to follow it. The whole situation of if you're going to have sex out of, marriage, you're a horrible person. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, you need to follow my rules, get out. So instead of like dealing with it as an adult, because I wasn't an adult, I decided just to, just do my own thing. So for a long time, we didn't talk. And gosh, I'm trying to remember how long it was. It had to be like 10 years.
Oh my gosh, that is a long time.
Yeah.
That's that kind of shocks me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
And some of that had to do with my stubborn pride, his stubborn pride, and a toxic relationship I was in with a boyfriend at the time. But I do remember I was probably about 21. So, I was still really young.
Yeah.
And I was living with the boyfriend. I got a phone call at my work. I was doing computer support at the time. And I don't even remember who called me, but they said, I heard from a neighbor that your dad's been rushed to the hospital. And I was like, what hospital, where? And they're like, I don't know. And so, of course, I'm at work frantic, trying to figure out like, what's going on? How serious is it? And it wasn't a situation at this time. My dad had remarried to my stepmom. And it wasn't a situation where I could pick up the phone and talk to my stepmom. She had some mental illness issues as well. And we just did not get along. Like, conversations were not a thing at that time. So eventually, and this is another situation where I'd love to be able to like explain like the milestones of what happened, but a lot of it I don't remember.
Okay.
Like, somehow I found out that he had been life flighted to the LDS hospital.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I remember showing up at the LDS hospital with my boyfriend at the time, and there was just such tension through my uh, family because they were all LDS and they knew I was living with my boyfriend, and we were, of course, having relations, I'll call it. And there was a lot of judgment there as I walked in the door.
It's hard for me to hear stories like this because, it's a time where family rallies together and it's just, you'd think that it would be like, oh, welcome back, hugs and love, but there's just tension and judgment. This is not a place for judgment. That's hard for me to hear for you. I'm really sorry that happened to you and that you had to feel that instead of, I'm so sorry you're going through this with your father. This is a really, this is a time, did you grieve that? Have you grieved this moment? Or is this something you kind of, what I'm hearing from you is you compartmentalize a lot of the grief in your life,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to call you out on it. I'm just saying it sounds to me like you haven't really processed a lot of this. You've just kind of stuffed it all away.
Yeah, it's the stuff it all away. Don't talk about it. If you don't talk about it, it doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That only works for a while. And I there were some, aunts. I remember my two aunts were okay with me being there, but my stepmom's family literally got up. They were like, "Oh, she's here," like, and said some stuff out loud. I don't remember what it was, and then left. And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like,
you're like his eldest daughter. You would
yes,
think that
yeah.
it would be more of like, I'm so glad she's here. This is her rite of passage. Like, I just see things so differently. So I guess it's just my perspective. But
Yeah, and a lot of that could have been the way that I presented myself in the situation. I probably came in there very standoffish because I felt like I was being judged by my lifestyle, which wasn't even extreme lifestyle. Like
sure,
when you look at it, like I wasn't partying, I wasn't, it was just I was living with my boyfriend.
it's just culture and the LDS. It's our culture.
Yeah.
It's how the shame you felt when you walked in. You felt judged. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. But so I was able to finally see my dad, and I remember just walking down the hall and like I saw him in the bed and I saw him like hooked up to a ton of machines. And I remember just like hitting the ground, like, oh my gosh, like this is my dad in the bed. And then just so much guilt of us not speaking, like me not knowing if he was going to live. All of those things just hit me all at once. And I remember my boyfriend at the time, who was I got married eventually. It's my ex-husband, picking me up, and we went into the room together. And it was just really scary because I didn't know what happened, what was going to happen. So he, I guess, was helping a neighbor, and I only like started to piece this together when I started to ask questions. It wasn't like anybody was like divulging what happened and how things were going to move forward. Like a lot of times the nurses wouldn't talk to me because, they needed to talk to his wife at the time. It was very challenging to understand like what's going on. He had been riding a horse that was a smaller like colt horse that he was breaking, as what they call it, to make it so that he could, other people could ride it. He was helping some neighbors with some cows, and he had an aneurysm on the horse.
Oh.
And what that meant is that his whole body just went limp.
Yeah.
And he rolled forward on the horse, and the horse didn't know what to do. And all of that weight rolling forward, the horse ended up rolling over the top of him, which in turn, the saddle horn of the horse crushed his brainstem.
Oh my.
Yeah. So it was a very bad injury. Of course, he had other injuries, like I'm sure broken bones or whatever, but that brainstem injury is really the thing that never healed. So what that meant is that they tried to do physical therapy and get him back working, but he just couldn't do it because like his body